Damn, guys, that was an interesting fight because I took a few things away from that let me know exactly where Canelo Alvarez is at in his career. So stick around to the end of 6 things we learned because I'm going to be assessing exactly how this fight went and where Canelo goes next in his boxing career. Hello everyone, welcome back to A Guy Called Henry and welcome to 6 things we learned from Canelo Alvarez versus Edgar Berlanga. A fight that not many people thought would be competitive, that most people saw being stopped within the distance, with Canelo winning in dramatic fashion, with Berlanga having never really fought at that level before or even close to that level before. People assumed that this would be a whitewash for Canelo Alvarez. They didn't think that Berlanga would have a chance in this one, and they thought that there would be a dramatic knockout, and we didn't get that, guys. You know, this was a unanimous points decision for Canelo. I think the scorecards were completely fine. They were nice and wide. As I saw it as well, it was a wide points win for Canelo. He also scored a knockdown. I think it was in round maybe 3. I don't remember exactly when it happened, but it was a nice, clean knockdown. And this fight was, it was one that went the distance. It was one that, you know, probably didn't have the entertaining finish that we were hoping for. But, guys, if you've not seen 6 things we learned before, what we do in this video is we go through the 6 key learnings, 6 key points from this fight, and I take you through them. We have 3 different boxes. We have red, we have orange, and we have green, and I sort of grade each of these things against those different things. So we'll get straight into this video. As you'll see, I've got my boxes along the bottom here, and each of them will display as we go through the video. Before I get into this one, guys, please drop your comments in the comment section below. Let me know what you thought of this fight. What do you think both men should do next? Please give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. Box number 1 is a red box for the Berlanga tactics in this fight. Now, if you subscribe to my channel, if you're a fan of my videos, you'll know I do my game film analysis. I do my due diligence before these fights. I never like to rush into a prediction because, you know, often a fighter is not very popular, but it doesn't mean they're not technically good. It doesn't mean they don't do things well. And, you know, Berlanga, I thought he might have been one of those guys because I'd never really watched him. So I wanted to know, what does this guy do? And how do you beat Canelo Alvarez? So we looked at how you beat Canelo Alvarez in that video. We looked at what Bivol did well. We looked at what Munguia tried to replicate because his performance was pretty good too. There's no point in going back as far as Floyd because Canelo's a completely different fighter now and Floyd is a one-of-a-kind fighter. And to be honest with you guys, you know, looking at what is needed to be done to beat Canelo, I didn't think Berlanga had the tactics in there to do it. I didn't think he executed them particularly well if that's what he was trying to do. And even in, you know, some of the pre-fight camp videos, we saw him watching that Bivol fight, seeing what Bivol did well. And look, Berlanga's not Bivol. He lacks a lot of the technique Bivol has, but there were certain elements of Bivol's game I thought he would have put in the ring. The first thing was the lack of activity on the jab, and you'd see at the start of each round, Berlanga would, not early on, but later on in the fight, he would try and be more active with the jab. He started with a high guard. Later on in the fight, he started shooting from the hip, trying to be sort of pouring with that jab, maintain his distance, use a lot of stiff arms to keep, you know, put that jab out, try and keep Canelo at range, keep him at distance. And, you know, it was something that I thought he needed to be much more active with his jab, much more small movements with his feet, keep on balance. And I just don't know if he has the skill set to actually be able to execute that kind of maneuver. I also think that his cardio is probably not good enough. His punch output was fairly low throughout the fight, and he was definitely looking to look to counter Canelo in this fight. Something that we saw him do a lot was end up on the ropes. And I said before this fight, you know, if you're Berlanga, you can't be on those ropes against Canelo because that's where Canelo wants you. He wants to get you to the ropes. He wants to work. He wants to hit around your guard through the middle and create opportunities to connect with powerful punches. And Berlanga gave him endless opportunities to do that. I thought he was on the ropes far too much. And I could see he was trying to counter off the ropes. I appreciate that as a strategy. He made that a realm for Canelo that was maybe a bit more dangerous than Canelo is used to because he's normally boxing guys that try and keep it long and don't want to get sat at close range. But more often than not in this fight, Berlanga was very happy to hold his feet, sit in range, and let Canelo come to him and be very, very close to him. Have his lead feet. Their lead feet were close multiple times in this encounter, you know, almost on top of each other. And, you know, often he would just sit there with his high guard, and he was definitely looking to counterpunch Canelo in this fight. I think he needed to lead off a bit more to be successful. The other key element that I didn't see him doing that I thought he would do more was when you lead off against Canelo, attacking at the right moment, because Canelo does this thing, and he did it all the time in this fight, and he was able to move as he pleased in this contest, Canelo. He was really able to just sort of step into range any way he wanted to, because Canelo does this thing where, typically in boxing, you want to maintain your balance, maintain your stance so that you're always able to punch whatever's happening, moving forwards, moving backwards. But Canelo has this thing he does where he keeps his front foot in the same position, brings his back foot in closer, therefore narrowing his stance, creating less balance, and that was when Bivol would attack. Also, when he had him on the back foot, Canelo often switches into southpaw, and Bivol would also go for him in that moment. He'd really attack with aggression, then with fast combinations, and Berlanga never did that. So I feel like Berlanga Whether he executed the tactics that he is able to do with what he has, or whether he just didn't see these things in his camp. I'm sure they did. I'm sure his people are much smarter than I am. If I can see those things, I'm sure his team could see those things, and maybe he just isn't capable of doing those things. So they tried to build a strategy for Berlanga that might actually work for him, for what he's able to do. I definitely think he is someone in his career who's been in love with his power, and he's relied on it a lot. And I think here he was trying to bring that into play. I think he thought he could really hurt Canelo, and he did land some shots on Canelo. And Canelo couldn't just walk straight through Berlanga's shot, so Berlanga definitely does have pop. But it wasn't a decisive factor in this fight, unfortunately, for Berlanga. The second box, the second thing that we learned in this fight, it is a red box for Canelo's lack of killer instinct. Canelo has been one of the best finishers in boxing in his career. He's had so many knockouts, so many highlight reel knockouts, extreme power, timing of the counter punch. And obviously, as you go through the weights, that power is less telling. He's up at 168. I completely get it. Berlanga, a massive man in the ring, probably more like a 175-pounder, and then rehydrated. So he probably he may have weighed up to 185, 190 in that ring. He looked absolutely huge. Maybe not as much as 190, but you know what I mean? Touching on it, he may have weighed just under 190 in that ring. Definitely the much bigger man. The power's only going to have so much impact when the guy is that much bigger. I thought that Canelo, he did try to push the fight and get a finish, but I feel like this is kind of 2 points. Canelo lacked killer instinct in that he didn't finish the fight. He had him knocked down. He had him really hurt. It was actually really nice because what Canelo did was he was putting his jab out there and he was baiting the parry from Berlanga. And Berlanga tried to parry, extended his backhand to parry that shot and left himself completely exposed. And Canelo threw a very, very fast, very, very powerful left hook. So in that sense, the shot power is there. But we've seen it a couple of times now where he'll hurt his man, he'll knock them down potentially, and then he'll carry them to a points decision. It was the same with John Ryder. It was the same with Munguia. And it was the same with Berlanga. And you just worry that Canelo now has just slipped a bit too far. He's just slipped a bit too far. And whilst he won every round and won it more or less every round, and he won it well, the fight, he was the clear winner, the clear victor. He actually ate a lot of punches in this fight too in the end. His face was marked up. And you do just worry, is it now time for Canelo to say it's the end of my career? Is it time to finish things? I'll get to what I think Canelo should do next at the end, but there's definitely a question mark over whether or not he should continue. While you're making that much money, you probably want to, but he's got to call it quits at some point. And I definitely think we won't see him at 175 again. I don't think we're going to see a Bivol rematch. And whether he remains fighting 168 contenders is another question. Also, point number 3, and it's an orange box for the Canelo cardio. I think that, Canelo's cardio has been on the decline for some time now. I don't think he's got the output he once had. And it was a problem earlier in his career. In the Golovkin fights, you saw that he didn't really show sustained attacks. He definitely looked tired. He allowed Golovkin to back him up in those fights until he started moving his head and holding his feet and countering and making him miss and doing that with far more effectiveness. I think Canelo's cardio is on the decline. I think that you see him moving his head far, far less than he used to. It was pretty much non-existent in this fight. Similar in the John Ryder fight, similar in the Munguia fight. He's not slipping the way that he used to. You remember that incredible sequence against Danny Jacobs where it's a highlight reel moment where he's moving his head. He sort of slips and evades about 7 or 8 punch combination. And throughout the fight, it was a feature, making your opponent reluctant to throw because, they're worried they're going to miss. They're worried you're going to make them pay. Berlanga definitely wasn't afraid to throw in this fight. It was something that he did with relative ease. He was afraid. That's probably not fair. He was afraid to throw in that I feel like he was purely counter-punching. He wasn't really leading off much. But he wasn't worried about missing once he was countering, I'd say. So I think Canelo's cardio isn't what it was. I think that it's still at a pretty good level, though, because obviously he's getting through 12 rounds regularly. So I can't give it a red box. That would be unfair to say. But I don't think Canelo is the beast he once was. Point number 4, and again, it's a red box for the discipline and refereeing in this fight. There was multiple moments on display in this fight where there were punches low, there was multiple low blows, and either fighter would respond with a low blow in that moment. And then there was actually a sequence in the sort of mid-rounds where they were exchanging low blows because they were pissed with each other for landing low blows. It was utterly bizarre. I think there was a couple punches around the back of the head. Berlanga a couple times put his head in. He led with his head, with a headbutt. And the referee, I just felt, didn't get a grip of the fight. I felt like the referee could have done a much, much better job of controlling proceedings. And yeah, I think someone on my live stream in my comment section said that this referee had a bit of history with, not being on it in the fights he's refereed recently. And, if that's true, I need to go and look. But I didn't think he did a good enough job of controlling the action. I thought that there was quite a bit of foul play in there. No biting from Berlanga like he did against Angulo, where he got a suspension before. But certainly moments where you say, Can't really do that, mate. Do you know what I mean? So from both men, though, and there was no respect, and I thought Berlanga didn't show Canelo too much respect. He was definitely pretty feisty in there. There was moments where he was sort of yelling at him and saying, come on and stuff, and I'm sort of like, mate, just box. Just try and win, you know? So yeah, I thought the discipline was an issue in that fight. Moving into box number 5, and it's a green box for Berlanga. I thought, whilst I didn't agree with Berlanga's tactics, what I would say is that I think Berlanga can mix it with the top guys at 168 pounds, and that is, you know, that's enough in itself. I don't think he's going to beat all of them. I would fancy Caleb Plant against Berlanga. I would fancy Munguia against Berlanga, but he's not terrible. You know, a lot of people before this fight were saying he was terrible, he was rubbish, he was useless. He's none of those things. He's okay. He's very, very okay. And you have to take these opportunities when they come in your career. But he's 27 now. You know, I feel like he's got 4 more years to sort of develop and to get to the point where you'd say, this guy should really be, you know, what he's going to be now. And it would be a really good learning experience from that fight, I have to say, you know, to be under that level of pressure, to be in there with somebody who's that much more seasoned than you are. I think it was really good for him. And I think it's going to be a good moment in his career. Looking back, I think he'll go, do you know what? I didn't get knocked out. I learned loads. Yes, I took a lot of punishment in the fight, but I got through 12 rounds. I lost a lot of the rounds. But look, I don't think Berlanga's going to go on to be a world beater. I don't even think he's going to go on to be a world champion necessarily. But I think he'll be in the mix in the top 5, top 10 of that division. And I think there's some good fights to make with him. So I think he's going to be a fun fighter to watch. I hope that in the future he'll show a bit more ambition, because I felt like in that ring, to win it, he needed to be a lot more active. He lost it clearly. He was really just counterpunching and looking for a one-shot moment to kind of, you know, hurt Canelo and maybe get his hand raised. And that is part of somebody who believes himself to be a huge puncher. And he can punch, but he's not that one-punch knockout artist. And I think he did okay. I think he did what he could with what he has to try and be in this fight to some capacity. I think if he opened up more, Canelo probably would have stopped him. So there is also that element when you talk about Canelo's slippage. You know, Berlanga wasn't really leading off that much. But then, you know, when you know what Canelo can do typically with the guard manipulation, the way he throws up the middle, throws around the sides, creates opportunities and openings for himself, I just would have expected a knockout for Canelo, especially when Berlanga hasn't mixed it at that level before. And he was opening up at the end, especially Berlanga. You know, the last 2 rounds, there were some exchanges where he was really going for it. So I think what I'd like to see next for Berlanga is a Jaime Munguia fight or a Caleb Plant fight. Maybe even step it down a level and put him in with Trevor McCumbee. That could be really good, actually. You know, Berlanga McCumbee might be the fight to make next, and I'm sure there'd be a knockout in that fight. I'm sure it'd be fun. So that could be cool. I think the build-up would be exciting. They're both characters. They're both explosive. So yeah, I think that'd be good. Box number 6 and the final box in the video. I'm going to give a final box, a green box for Canelo versus Crawford. Now, after Crawford's performance against Madrimov, I actually gave that fight a red box. I said it can't happen next. I don't think Crawford's ready to go up to 168 and fight Canelo. And he still might not be, and he probably still isn't. I think 168 might be too much. Ideally, you make that fight at 160. But I look at where Canelo's at right now. I look at the slippage in him that I can see. I look at the fact he's probably not going to be able to mix it with the top contenders at 168. You know, obviously Benavidez moved up now. He's definitely not going to mix it with the guys at 175. He might be able to sort of hold those belts hostage in inverted commas. You know, not take on the biggest challenges for the next year or two. And he might be able to hold on to those belts and win on points moving forward. But I think if I was Canelo right now, and what I think I'd like to see as a fan is Crawford versus Canelo, and then that's it. You know, you sail off into the sunset. I think Crawford can go on. I still think Crawford's at the absolute top of his game. But I think you get that Crawford money. I think there's a lot of money in that fight right now. I actually think that's the biggest money fight Canelo can make by a significant amount. I think that, you know, you can't keep fighting guys like Berlanga and not knocking them out. You can't keep fighting guys like Berlanga and performing like that and expect to keep making the big bucks. So, yeah, for me, I think that Crawford-Canelo is the fight you make. I think if you're Canelo, you take that money and you retire after that fight. And I think if you're Terence Crawford, you can kind of stay on whichever way it goes. So that's the fight I would make. I think I'd like to see that fight. I think it'd be very, very exciting. But guys, you know, what did you make of this fight? What did you think about the performance of Berlanga? What did you think about the performance of Canelo? Do you think Canelo has slipped a lot? What do you think Canelo should do next? Who do you see winning if he's to fight Terence Crawford? Who would you like to see Berlanga in there with next? Because I think, you know, he can have a fun career. I think he's an explosive fighter. I think he can have a really interesting, really entertaining career. But thank you for sticking with me to the end of this one, guys. It's been a pleasure doing 6 Things We Learned, delivering this for you. The channel is growing really fast, guys, so please subscribe. You know, I've hit 3,000 subscribers today. I'm delighted at how quickly that's happened. I can't quite believe it. So please show your support for the channel. Like the video, subscribe, get your comments in the comment section below. And as I always say, on to the next one.